Check this out.
Expectations were on the floor. How are we f***ing beneath them? I haven't touched this game at all since it launched last month, but after the buggy, unoptimized mess that was Black Ops 6 last year, and the general consensus throughout the entire collective of people who have played the game and aren't complete shills, I don't think I have to play Black Ops 7 to know that this is a terrible game with minor changes to the overall multiplayer experience. Hello, I'm the Battlefield Bartender, Merc Clan's pet Australian and resident drunk. I'm also the kind of YouTube content creator that refuses to do what so many others within the gaming space do, which is desperately attempt to turn everything into a meme. With the kind of music you'd hear out of a SpongeBob episode, or the blatantly forced overreactions that make you cringe until you accidentally crush the bridge of your nose. And besides, with the kind of subject matter we'll be touching base on briefly throughout this video, it just wouldn't be respectful if I did do that. Kind of a juxtaposition to the kind of content that I usually make, I know, but those shenanigans videos of me fiddle fucking around playing video games with friends are raw reactions from live streams or just spur of the moment stuff. Even then, I refuse to edit those videos in a way that caters to the zombies within Gen Z and Gen Alpha that have watched way too much TikTok bullshit that their attention spans are completely far gone. I'm not kidding, you could put a video of a burning midget in front of them and they'd be at least mildly entertained as long as you told them it was animated by Disney. So to put all that simply, fuck you and your brain rot filth, I'm gonna do shit my way. I don't think it has to be said at all, but many of you out there watching this right now already know my opinions of one of the majority of Merc's favourite video game, Call of Duty, is. I hate it. But here's the thing, once upon a time I loved this game. It's not that I hate Call of Duty because it's Call of Duty, hell no. I'm all for a little dumb shooter fun where I see fit, and some of my favourite video games I've ever played are pretty much based around the premise of doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. But there was a time where Call of Duty really had some creative vision and had a nice pair of balls on it. The kinds of balls that would get it wrapped up into a lot of controversy. About as much controversy as Grand Theft Auto does on a regular basis. Not the kind of controversy involving virtual hookers and cocaine-huffing psychopaths, but the kind where they were really depicting horrible events that could actually happen. The kinds of controversial and horrible events that would spark world wars kinds of things, that would get it into trouble with Fox News of all places.
That's your daughter. You know she gets that from you.
But now that we're into the throes of Call of Duty's second identity crisis, how is it that this is starting to look and feel more like a weird fucked up combination of this, and this? It's starting to get all a little confusing. I can't stress this enough, and I feel like I have to make an adamant point that I don't hate Call of Duty, I hate what it has become. Because yet again, years ago, the franchise was all about paying homage and respect to those who were in service and fought and died for our freedoms. From a World War II shooter that was putting Medal of Honor to shame, then into Modern Warfare showing the horrors of modern combat and seeing what our boys in Afghanistan were going through. Roughly, and probably the most awesome CIA conspiracy theory-laced mindfuck narratives that can only be written in a setting that's set in the 60s.
I'm told that you are the very best that we have. Anywhere.
Again, how did we go from games like World at War that really drove the point home that war is worse than hell, the original Modern Warfare trilogy and its this is the boiling point in the modern world we are very close to themes, and the first Black Ops campaign's this is what the full force of McCarthyism looks like story, to huffing dicey drugs with friends in the middle of a demilitarized zone, where you fight a blatant nostalgia-baiting liar, a copyright infringement case filed by Capcom waiting to happen, giant Michael Rooker for some dumb fucking reason, and $2 store Metal Gears accompanied by Konami lawyers waiting for Capcom to wrap up their case first. How in the blinky bill fuck did we get here? Like I said, this is Call of Duty's second identity crisis, and it fucking shows. You guys remember what went down the first time this was happening to Call of Duty back in 2016? Well, you should. Not a lot happened in 2016. See, Call of Duty had just announced Infinite Warfare, the third Call of Duty title in a row that would be set in a distant future setting. Black Ops 2 doesn't count because that was set 13 years into the future from when that game launched, and most of the campaign was set in the mid to late 80s. And by this point, people were already fed up with going too far into the future because of one major point that people are making about Black Ops 7 in the present right now. It lacks the same identity as all of the other Call of Duty titles. See, every other title was grounded in reality to an extent. Sure, they still had those massive set pieces and explosive moments, but they were built off of actual historical battles and wars that took place, or what-if scenarios that led to what can potentially happen if shit between superpowers go awry. Black Ops 7 is just fucking silly sauce. Now, this is an example I'm going to keep returning to for two reasons. One, it's a Treyarch game, and two, it has more artistic and relative integrity as a video game based on war. And that game is Call of Duty World at War, the 5th ever mainline Call of Duty title released, and Treyarch's second crack at the Call of Duty franchise.
It's the Coral! We're stuck on the...
This game was mostly set in the ending days of the Second World War and follows two sides. You have Private Miller of the US Marines fighting in the Pacific Theater in Japan against the Japanese Imperial Army, and then in the eastern front of the European theater you have Private Petrenko in the Soviet Union fighting against the Wehrmacht and the Nazis in Germany alike. A lot of this game is mostly historically accurate, not just for the weapons, the setting, the time certain missions take place, and the Nazi and Rising Sun flags unapologetically being flown in enemy territories you're invading, but because of the pre-mission cutscenes that play out like mission briefings, accompanied by topographical maps, infographics, and archival footage, giving the player a lot of historical context as to what you're about to do and why you're doing it. This is one of the very first cutscenes you see the moment you load up World at War's campaign for the first time. It is actual archival footage of a real prisoner of war being executed by an Imperial Japanese soldier, really setting the tone for what is to come. Not to mention it gives you a brief prelude to why the US started fighting the Japanese in the first place, giving you a neat infographic presentation that concisely explains the oil embargo the US government initiated against Japan, crippling their wartime production, which resulted in their retaliation in the form of the Pearl Harbor bombing raids. This was when Call of Duty gave a shit and actually taught you some proper war history. As opposed to 2025's version of Black Ops 3's Train Go Boom moment. Yeah, that was so fun. Cough, cough, cough. Another thing that World at War did differently that Black Ops 7 tripped over its own dick trying to replicate was a way to mix up the core gameplay established by previous titles. A lot of this was done in the American half of the campaign in Japan, purely because Japan was fighting using guerrilla warfare tactics. You would see enemies banzai charging right at you, which was always terrifying, like watching your death running at you, screaming its lungs out. Some enemies would even hide in spider holes and chuck grenades at you, others would be sniping in tree canopies. Nothing a good old flamethrower can't help. And though they were scripted more than half the time, there would be booby traps set to kill you and your squad mates as well. This is good game design innovation that adds to the experience without losing an already established franchise's identity or losing what made the game fun to play in the first place. It feels like a Call of Duty game and adds new and welcome elements into the gameplay that make it deserving of being a new installment of the series without detracting what made prior titles fun to play before it. Adding in bargain basement Destiny raid bosses into your campaign while ripping off Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid, and making the shittiest callback to one of the best earlier missions of the first Black Ops game are not good additions and only shit all over a franchise's legacy. But hey, if you prioritize the marketing by showing off a cat cafe and a multiplayer map, then you've already fucked up by colossal proportions.
Those is call-outs where it's like, I got him in the cat cafe. That's gonna be fun to say no matter what.
Well, you shut the fuck up about your fucking cat cafe. Originally, when this game came out last month, you were more or less forced to play through this embarrassment of a campaign to get to the extraction mode called Endgame, which, yeah, looking at it, plays like the endgame of a looter shooter, which is what Call of Duty seems to try and be to add more live service elements to the game to justify milking every penny out of the player's wallet, which just doesn't fucking work, dickhead. The Call of Duty I grew up with never tried doing this. Hell, Modern Warfare 2019 never tried doing this, because it just wasn't what Call of Duty is. And I guess it just goes back to big AAA developers trying to make all of their well-established franchises into a live service game to get a slice of the Fortnite succession pie. Newsflash, you can't have your franchise become the new Fortnite overnight by copying Fortnite. It'd be like trying to beat Red Bull in a Formula 1 championship season. You can't beat Red Bull by copying them. You have to stick to your literal and figurative guns and make the things that make your franchise what it is better with every new release. Bungie knew this back in the day when they were developing the Halo games, and from Halo 1 we got Halo 2, which improved upon what made the first game great, cut out the fat, and added in new gameplay features like dual wielding that just feels like the right kind of addition to the Halo formula. With Half-Life establishing new ways to tell story in a first-person shooter with environmental storytelling and fun gameplay, Valve leaned into that with Half-Life 2 with the development of the Source engine, using its advanced physics engine to add depth to the world around the player, and making the gunplay fun by weaponizing physics in the only way Half-Life could. And more recent examples, like Capcom making exclusively single-player experiences with the Resident Evil remakes that modernized the gameplay, bringing those older games to a modern standard, Devil May Cry 5 being the most fun hack-and-slash action game to this day, and a new franchise like Pragmata just around the corner garnering a lot of anticipation. You even have id Software with the newer Doom games, with Doom 2016 bringing Doom back to its classic Twitcher shooter roots, while adding modern gameplay mechanics to enhance the gameplay and stand amongst the established titans of the industry. Doom Eternal, which is like the final evolution of the FPS genre in so many fucking ways, and Doom the Dark Ages, which blends FPS gunplay with a first-person melee combat system that doesn't make you want to tear your fucking eyes out. Look, to be honest, I don't know. It just seems like Activision is really pushing all of its Call of Duty teams to the absolute limit, to the point where they become so creatively bankrupt. And I mean, having to use AI in so many areas to pick up the slack levels of creatively bankrupt. I can't quite prove it yet, but the whole story feels like it was written by ChatGPT, and a lot of the calling cards used in the multiplayer are so obviously made by AI, it's actually fucking woeful. And speaking of the multiplayer, even though I haven't played this game, I know if I did, it'd just be more of the same, because this kind of broken mess of balancing issues and the general sense of the devs just throwing a bunch of shit at a wall and hoping something sticks has gone unchecked for 4 fucking games now. Maybe 5, but the jury's still out on that. I wouldn't have so much of a problem with the gunplay and the multiplayer if it wasn't so borderline fucking wretched, with the overabundance of weapons and even more so with the weapon attachments available to the player, which just makes the gunplay way too easy. Especially to well-trained mouse and keyboard players like myself that have been playing tactical shooters like Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon for years, abusing the gunsmith system to basically make the guns extremely accurate or deal enough damage to equalize damage output across every weapon in the game's arsenal, with the only detractor between each weapon being the rate of fire. See, in my opinion, the whole gunsmith system just needs to either be scrapped or heavily reworked, because it just isn't working well for the Call of Duty multiplayer formula anymore. Throughout the past 5 releases I've played, the only time I've actually enjoyed the multiplayer in the recent Call of Duty games was when people had fuck all to work with, and because of that, gunplay was much tighter. You felt like there was a sense of skill, and you'd have to carefully manage the recoil of whatever weapon you were using. That all kind of gets thrown out the window like a bloody wet paper towel the minute the Season 1 title update drops for these games, with the Battle Pass chucking weapon setups at people that instantly break the balancing of the multiplayer, and the general atmosphere of the game gradually devolving from what makes Call of Duty an arcade-style military shooter into an old MLG montage come to life in real time, with scenes like Nicki Minaj slide-cancelling across the map using some out-of-place laser rifle that looks like a las rifle from Warhammer 40k if it was painted by a 6-year-old girl. Even more weapons funneled into the armory, making each weapon in the roster less distinguished from each other, giving less meaning to whatever choice of weapon you want, to even more gratuitous crossover microtransaction packages that really clash with the game's art style, just kind of killing all sense of immersion into the world of Call of Duty. By that point, the gunplay just becomes boring with those same arguments about the lack of difference in how each weapon feels, except for shotguns and sniper rifles, and gunplay being so stiff you'd think you got rigor mortis. It's just fucking bullshit. And with Black Ops 7 adding little more than a new reskin of the game's art style, pushing it a decade into the future, and a new wall jump feature, I can guarantee it feels exactly the fucking same. The gameplay that, from what I can see, has almost 100% been carried over from Black Ops 6, that attempts to be fun and invigorating, just ends up being inevitably repetitive, just with a flavour of a future setting that is just utterly half-assed, even more so than Black Ops 3 was back in the day. Oh, we got a few robots and people with cyborg arms and robot dogs that were ripped off from the Division 2. We superglued a couple of LEDs to your guns and everything is so washed with a cartoony colour palette you think you're tripping balls on acid. Our future is so gritty and realistic. No. Fuck you. Fuck this game, your future setting is dick. See, the only time a color palette that's allowed to assault your eyeballs like Black Ops 7 does is when it fits the art style that's been established. That's why Overwatch succeeded in its early years, because of its borderline Disney Pixar art style and animation. That's why Cyberpunk succeeded, because it blended the corporate eye-catching adverts and billboards juxtaposed with the dirty streets and back alleys and coldness of the evil and various misdeeds and atrocities committed on the ground level in a city where catching a bullet to the face is as common as catching a cold. Sometimes less color can achieve an artistic effect that makes your world feel real and build a sense of immersion, and older Call of Duty titles like World of War and the original Modern Warfare have proven that. Also, I don't know who signed off on greenlighting American Dad and Beavis and Butthead to be added to Black Ops 6, but the only conclusion I can come to is that they were high on bath salts and went, yeah, that's fucking sick, just chuck that fucker in. And more on the balancing, the more these seasonal title updates get patched in, the less balanced the game becomes, making it more broken than a Fabergé egg being shoved up a virgin arsehole. And since Black Ops Cold War, these games seem to be less optimized, especially when each PC port of these recent titles feel like they were done by a pack of chimps with Alzheimer's. And to add insult to injury, they force you to restart your game every time a shader caching update has to be done, when literally every other game in existence, even the shittier ones, do the shader patches either in the background or as soon as you boot up the game without having to reboot the game from desktop every bloody time. It's like since Modern Warfare 2019, we've gone one step forward and a whole cheese-rolling competition back. I don't blame the multiplayer teams for this, the blame solely falls on Warzone, because again, Activision is clearly trying to make a live service to rival the one franchise that's dominated the space for almost a decade now. And because of that, most of the funding is being pushed towards Warzone instead of every other area that desperately needs it to make Call of Duty the controversial and best-selling powerhouse they used to be. I've had this same debate with so many people within Merclan, and I haven't brought this point up yet, but you don't have to buy these titles every year. Clearly a lot of people outside of our online family are going back to Modern Warfare 3 2023's multiplayer because it's debatably more refined out of the recent titles. People playing on PC are even going back to Black Ops 1, 2, and 3 to play modded zombies maps that only the power of PC gaming can provide. And people like me are still going even further back to play the older campaigns because they are objectively more fun than anything else the series has to offer right now. It's like every other game that releases on a yearly basis. Take the EA Sports, FIFA, or NFL, or Madden series for example. People who like dabbling in those games are only buying those titles every few years or so because of how little those games actually change or improve apart from graphical fidelity, if you even fucking care about that. Every yearly release in the 2K umbrella of sports games from NBA to PGA and WWE is pretty much the same. The only difference is the yearly roster changes for their respective sports and little additional innovation apart from graphical improvement. The only exception I find that stands out from this would have to be the EA Sports Formula 1 franchise, which is developed by Codemasters and not EA themselves. Because every odd-numbered year, these games are more feature-packed and improve everything from the accuracy of the handling model of each car to the accuracy of track rendering, even more depth added into the career modes. I mean, hell, this year alone we got 2 story/scenario modes in F1 25, which featured the third entry of the Breaking Point story mode, and a whole story mode based on the F1 movie that came out this year, featuring snippets from the movie as cutscenes, and better yet, you can actually hire Brad Pitt or Damson Idris into your F1 team in the My Career mode. Codemasters have even announced that they're doing away with yearly releases, opting to make an expansion pack for F1 25, which will be a stand-in for F1 26, adding in tracks that'll be in the 2026 Formula 1 calendar, the teams that'll be racing next year, and a roster change, all at half price of an actual game, because they've acknowledged that with the yearly release cycle every second year, these games just don't have enough new gameplay features beyond handling and graphical improvements to justify a whole new fucking game release. It's taken them about a bloody decade to get to this point, but at least they're doing something about it. Back to Call of Duty, however, it's hard to tell if the entire coalition of studios working on these games are spread thin or just overworked with little time time to make a proper game in the present modern gaming ecosystem. Something clearly has to be done, either by spurring away from the yearly release model or actually doing what they originally set out to do with Modern Warfare 3 2 years ago, by releasing DLC expansions every second year as opposed to a full price title. Because if this is the level of quality that we're just going to have to expect from Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Sledgehammer, and Raven Software, one more fuck up like this is going to taint the legacy of all 4 studios. And that'd be a goddamn shame.